Tribe, I have a story that's going to ruffle your feathers, especially if you're an avid waterfowl hunter. I'm not going to play the news clip for copyright reasons, but to catch you up to speed here, in case you haven't heard, there was an HOA called Edgewater in Madison County, Alabama, just a few weeks ago who wanted to cull their native federally protected Canada geese population, only to later back down from their decision due to backlash from the public as well as the residents. Only for days later, Heritage Plantation in the same county as Edgewater vowed to exterminate their wild geese population of over 500. And despite having the same backlash, the Karens and Kevins on the board of the HOA doubled down on their decision to euthanize the animals along with the approval of the USDA and other wildlife agencies. It happened midnight, July 1st, 2026, mainly because the birds will be in a more calm state as they are not nocturnal, but also to avoid public inconveniences. So let's attack this. It's interesting when people say that hunters are a threat to wildlife, yet things like this happens more times throughout the year. And before I break down why I think this was a legalized crime committed by both the HOA and the government agencies we as hunters trust our native habitats and resources to, let me tell you a little more about the birds in question. Canada geese. I'm pretty sure you've had your run-ins with these Pokemon, but there are actually several subspecies, which it wasn't said which ones these are, but by context, I can only assume that they are the giant Canada geese, which was the population used to repopulate the declining wild population in the mid-1900s. Habitat loss, unregulated hunting, negligence, you get it, the usual rhetoric. And because of this, they were near extinct and the birds became federally protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which protects them from anyone harming them without the proper hunting licenses, permits, or stamps. Today, due to appropriate management efforts, their population is now peaking 7 million birds, with an approximately 3 million birds being non-migratory. And this doesn't mean that they can't fly, it just means that they've abandoned the need to, as migration is both an instinctual and a learned habit that's ruled by circumstances and the environment. They migrate for multiple reasons: food, nesting, you get it, but when they find an area that serves as a jackpot, they pretty much never migrate. And while many still do, others have adapted to the comfortability of humans. And that's actually a good thing. That means that we have stewarded the land to their liking. We provided grass for nesting as well as for food, as they're mainly herbivorous. And also we provided safety. Not many predators or natural predators to worry about. And fresh, clean waters, which the Karens and Kevins on the board of the HOA at Heritage Plantation believe that only they own. Despite the protests of residents that live and pay dues there, which they undoubtedly use to carry out this heinous act, they killed the birds against the residents' wishes. So if you are new to hunting, there are tags and then there are stamps. And much like tags for big game, stamps are used for waterfowl such as ducks and geese. And to hunt them in season, you need to have stamps. But even then, many states have regulations on how you can hunt them, what you can use, how many you can take, this, that, and so on. Then you have permits. And these are processed through various agencies, state wildlife agencies, usually like the DNR, but they're carried out through the USDA that handles culls in a division which they call their wildlife depredation. Unlike hunting, cull-offs are very different. Okay, the complainer applies for a permit out of season or any time of the season, really, to rid them of what they consider nuisance wildlife. But what determines that is usually three main factors, and at the top of the list is financial. And this can be anything for like damages to crops, buildings, livestock, but hard receipts and other documents that express financial loss must be submitted for review. Then there are health concerns, spread of disease to themselves, people, pets, even other domestic animals like livestock. Then there are safety concerns, obstruction to operations. So think if the geese were on the runway at the airport or attacking people or pets for no reason. Now, it's only natural that they would attack people or pets if you get too close to their young or their nesting grounds. So that's totally different. So it sounds like by definition that HOAs are considered a nuisance. I mean, think about it. They cause financial damage by charging you ridiculous, outrageous fees, cause health concerns by stressing you the heck out, and safety, I don't know, fill in the blanks. But 2 out of 3 boxes is good enough for me. Sounds like HOAs need to be eradicated. But to be fair, I did reach out to the HOA to try to see what their concerns exactly was, as well as the USDA in that division to see how they were planning to carry this out, but to no avail. So I had to put on my Sherlock Holmes hat and gather what facts I could, mainly through Facebook posts and news stories. And it turns out that measures were taken for years prior to deter the geese, but they failed. Okay. You don't want the geese there, okay? But the question here is, does this call for a call off for the reasons listed before? So let's attack this. Financial. Honestly, I didn't even have to dig too deep for this because geese are only a nuisance because of their numbers, but they're not destructive. It's not in their nature, okay? They nest in thick cover and they don't even have to dig. They basically just nest either on the ground or find some thick space to hide their eggs. They don't peck or chew wood. The only minor inconveniences is stuff like their droppings, which will eventually become nutrients in the soil. And it's a very valid health concern, true, but that's reasons I'll get into a little later. But listen, like, feces is everywhere in the natural world. Like, the earth actually demands that. Okay, that's why God created insects to like deal with them, but that freshly manicured grass means that they've culled them too. But even if so, just like Edgewater, the residents volunteered to clean it up, or better yet, voted for some of their HOA fees to go towards the groundskeep and maintenance to clean it up, which it should have all along. But that opens speculation for improper budgeting that I will leave the residents to dig into. But when it comes to financial, I'm not surprised to, not find anything significant because destruction is just not what geese are known for. And I'm going to go ahead and get safety out of the way. I also couldn't find any reports about frequent attacks on people or pets that would justify their extermination. But as for health, now health concerns are not only to be taken seriously, but to be examined thoroughly. Not once, but multiple times. And as stated in my other video about the tactics that governments and corporations will do to stop people from being self-sufficient, health and safety is always going to be at the forefront to push a narrative. Okay, and obviously this was the go-to ploy because who's going to push back on something so reasonable? So, yes, E. coli from their feces, but E. coli comes from contaminated soil. And honestly, you can get that from produce. But unless someone is out there eating the soil or eating the goose scat, or even gardening in the space that they do leave scat, I mean, that was not too much of a valid concern and therefore not a good enough reason to really cull them off. So they claimed that reports of avian flu, which is the bird flu, specifically the H5N1 virus, the one that 2 years ago caused egg prices to go sky high, that one. In short, the virus mainly infects birds, but can spread to livestock, even humans, yet this is extremely low with only 900 cases worldwide being fatal. And while some other animals can get sick from it, it poses no long-term health threat. And I'll link those sources down below. But symptoms are drastic in birds and mild in other species, yet none of the residents reported seeing gravely ill birds. But other sources states that the HOA had concerns that people and pets were getting sick, including 16 geese and some of the resident swans. But one flawed detail in that news story stood out to me. Where did the virus originate? Did the swans give it to the geese or the geese give it to the swans? And if that be the case, if bird flu was a major concern, why were only the geese taken, but not the resident ducks and swans? And because of this crucial detail, it leads me to believe that this was nothing more but a flex of authority for aesthetics. Like, you wanted a big pond and the geese didn't fit your image. You saw the Edgewater back down and you doubled down on your decision just so your ego won't be bruised. And even so, you've been trying to get rid of the birds for years, even before bird flu became a thing, but this became the reason to do it. You know, if you wanted the birds dead, Karen and Kevin's, just say that, but you don't have to hide behind actual reasonable concerns that are highly questionable in this case. Despite all the reason, the USDA packed them up on July 1st for, get this, hunters, $2,500. Yeah, I know my thumbnail said $4.54, but when you divide what they paid versus how many geese were taken, that's roughly a cup of coffee. Like, they could have at least rounded that up to $5. You know, that's not even close to what a rotisserie chicken at the store costs, which is going for like $7 right now. A bird that can feed one person for 2 days versus a bird that can feed one person for 2 weeks. Because apparently our hunting dollars isn't enough to preserve the wildlife we entrusted them to protect so that our children's children can have something to enjoy and we can also still have something to hunt. You know, I mean, the cost of a hunting license at least is a possibility that we would get something versus the cost of a permit is a guaranteed kill. So which one is more damaging? And check this. Since geese are amongst federally protected birds, the fines for harming just one of these little dragons range from $5,000 to $250,000 plus 1 year of jail time, depending on the offense and the bird in question, and a misdemeanor fine up to $15,000. There's your conservation money. So did they donate the birds for food? I highly doubt it, because sources state that when they do such euthanizations, they round them up into a trailer and gas them with carbon monoxide. So I'm pretty sure the meat is tainted by now and not suitable. And on top of that, there was the bird flu. So, you know, hunters, we shouldn't be so understanding of people wasting our resources like this. I mean, if every HOA and business across this nation wanted to get rid of their nuisance wildlife and decided to do the same for this same amount of price, then we're going to see a fast decline in animal population. Then that's going to trickle down on us after so many years to where we can only take a certain amount, or our licenses or permits, or not permits, our licenses or stamps or whatever you want to call it goes up. You know, just because our government agencies such as the USDA sell out on such weak claims. I mean, and this is where our hunting dollars go. They replace hunters with hitmen. So, and, you know, and it's crazy because we have to abide by all of these regulations. I mean, yet HOA gets to apply for, you know, a $2,500 permit and 500 geese are gone. For no other reason but aesthetics and flexing authority. Now you take that and you think about the hunters that had to pay a fine because a buck's antlers didn't have a certain amount of points on it. Or even if you're a fisherman, you know, the fish have to be a certain length or you're fined. But yet, a business or a HOA can apply for a cheap permit and gain more bodies under them in 1 day than hunters can in years. Yeah. And this is no different to me than overhunting. You know, hunters are branded out of season, like hunting out of season. They were branded as poachers. But then HOA can apply for a cheap permit and the law suddenly doesn't apply. Yeah, I mean, I keep saying this so that it marinates. I know I keep saying the same point over and over, different ways, but I really want you to sit with this. You know, I want you to be like, yeah, it's really messed up. Call-offs are a serious last step not to be taken lightly. You know, you can't just go whacking a bunch of animals just because they don't fit your aesthetics. They're not some accessory that you can throw on and then throw away. You know, they're precious resources that play an important role in the environment and in our lives. But I will say, there are some exceptions when it comes to rapidly producing invasive species, such as wild hogs, but that's not the case here. You know, even then, it kills future opportunities for hunting. And not to mention, even if you want to look at this from a biblical standpoint, it's irresponsible to God's creation. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is not what he meant when he granted dominion to humans over his creation. Like, we're supposed to reflect his level of stewardship through problem solving and ruling through love and need, not through arrogance and greed. I mean, you think about it from the perspective of what's like a boss or a leader. You know, bosses just tell you what to do. The leaders, they're in the trenches with you. They're actually out there guiding you. They're doing the work. That's what we're supposed to be. Not just something to say, oh, it's there, we can take advantage of it just because we're the dominant. We're on top of the food chain. Who cares? You're going to be quickly at the bottom. You know, you're going to be cannibalizing yourselves because you done mismanaged a lot of the resources that's out here. But it's great to know that accountability measurements are being taken by the residents against the board beyond lawsuits, and that is to reach out to the owners of the property to get the HOA board either revamped or removed. Because if you are in an HOA and that HOA is acting as a dictator over your wishes as a homeowner, then yeah, I mean, I find this to be a very reasonable action. And we as hunters also should be holding agencies like the USDA accountable for mismanaging our resources. They're over here handing out permits like it's Halloween candy. So even if, even if they like warned the HOA that this would only be a temporary fix, like they still doubled down and took the blood money because our hunting dollars aren't enough. And that wasn't even enough. Y'all act like animals don't have immune systems. Like if they get sick, they can't just heal themselves. Yeah, that's like saying you're going to take a healthy population of humans and cull them off just because a few people got, I don't know, the flu. That it has no reasonable grounds. But luckily, there are a few reasonable solutions that are federally approved and that won't get you fined. Okay, as long as you don't harm them, but they are used to deter them. So basically, you can harass and scare the birds so that the population don't get too comfortable around humans. That continues to lead to conflicts like this. And though they mainly eat grass, don't feed them processed stuff like bread or seeds, which is actually hard on their stomachs. They have plenty of food, okay? If you live in the city where huge populations are concerned, like advocate for hunting or trapping, like during the season to thin the herd naturally. It's like, it's a lot less wasteful than culls. Like hunters, we only take what we can as needed versus the cull off is basically a mass extinction event, you know, and it goes towards feeding people. Like regular hunting goes towards feeding that hunter's family and whoever else. So it's a win-win and a natural means of population control. But there is a happy ending, because not even a day later, a new flock arrived. So it's almost like call-offs don't work. If you survived the video this long, then attack that like button and subscribe to the tribe. I'm Alexandria Denise, your self-sufficiency coach in the area of hunting, fishing, and gardening, but I also attack subjects just like this that threatens the self-sufficiency lifestyle and the environment. So if you want to hear about tactics that the government and corporations will do to stop you from providing for yourself, then you might want to check out this video. But if not, you might like this one. I'll see you in my other videos, but until then, remember, skills bring wealth, seek God and nature for good health. Stay wild, live free.
Bare feet in the dust, heart beating